Well, what starts off as a relatively simple episode quickly turns into a lot more, and we realize that we really did not know Aunt Josephine at all.
Look away, 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 look away.
Hey guys, it's Kevin, my review for Series Unfortunate Events, Season 1, Episode 6, The Wide Window Part 2, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode, but I wasn't too optimistic about it, because as you guys know, Part 1 did not impress me all that much. I definitely enjoyed it, but it definitely was the weakest of the episodes we've had. I just found it to be much more of a meandering type episode. There wasn't a ton going on. There definitely was stuff happening, but it just seemed like it was kind of setting up what this episode was going to be, and that was very much the case because this episode was much closer to what I want the show to be. Still not a perfect episode. There's a lot of things in here that I'm still not exactly happy about, but I definitely did enjoy this episode overall. I thought this was a much more satisfying episode than what we got in the first part, which makes sense because, you know, these are supposed to be part 1, part 2, but I feel like this one definitely worked as, you know, really they could have crammed this into one episode. They really could have easily, but I really did enjoy this episode overall. There was a lot of stuff we found out here, a lot, especially with the secret organization. They're really starting to dive deeper into it, and I'm very happy about that. But let's just get into this episode because there definitely is a lot to talk about. So we start off and we see Klaus is reading Josephine's suicide note because, as we know, the last episode ended with them finding Josephine's suicide note as she, you know, supposedly killed herself, and she leaves the Baudelaires in the care of Sham, basically, and Violet then calls Poe, reads him the letter, and they quickly realize that there's something funny about the note. You know, he helpfully says they can always count on him, but they realize that there's something funny about the note. They point out all the grammatical errors in the note that Josephine would have never made. We know that Aunt Josephine is essentially a grammar Nazi. I mean, she is obsessed with grammar and will do anything she can to try to correct you. Even in the middle of a sentence, she will correct you with grammar. So they know there's no possible way this could be Aunt Josephine's handwriting, and they suggest that it has to be Count Olaf who wrote it. You know, who else could have done it? So the next morning, Poe comes to Josephine's house, and the Baudelaires explain that their theory to him, and Poe insists that there was no murder involved, and he suggests that they compare it to a sample of Josephine's handwriting, and that would be, you know, the logical thing to do. And I will definitely say Poe does make some logical decisions, but he makes a lot of illogical decisions as well. And again, you know, he's someone who sees the good in people, but I will admit he definitely did get a bit annoying in this episode. Like, the same thing has happened one time before. I don't understand how he's so easily fooled, but he figures that Klaus and Violet are imagining things, and Klaus shows him the troop parked outside the house watching the children. However, the troop's car is there, but there's no signal of the troop, so there's not really a way for Poe to prove that they're actually there. So Poe says that Sham has invited them to a restaurant for brunch to talk it over, and explains that Sham and him are trying to reach a knife store to buy a surprise for some children he knows, and Violet and Klaus refuse to go with brunch, but Poe says that he's going to settle the matter quickly before Hurricane Herman hits. And that's something that really does permeate the entire episode, is this threat of Hurricane Herman, that it's on the way. It was something we were introduced to in part 1. It's one of those things that, just like, you know, in the bad beginning where we had you know, the threat of what was going on. I can't really remember what it was in part 1, but part 2, you know, we had that screeching iguana clock. Part 3, you know, this one is definitely the threats of Hurricane Herman. That's something that is very well explored throughout this entire episode. So Poe then drives the Baudelaires into town, assures them that he will investigate Olaf, because yeah, he is definitely a little bit suspicious, but he's not as suspicious as, you know, they are. So at the Anxious Clown restaurant, an anxious Larry takes their order. Olaf claims that Josephine was his oldest and dearest friend, claiming that they met at cooking school many years ago, and she made him promise to raise any orphans that she might be taking care of when she committed suicide. And Larry's shocked to hear that Aunt Josephine is dead. I mean, he had no idea, and Larry suggests to cheer up cheeseburgers and tells children to look inside before they eat it. And the dude who played Larry, I know I said episode 1 that I wasn't a huge fan of him. No, he had a lot more to here, and he was a lot of fun to watch, but you definitely get the sense that Olaf is someone who is he's genuinely terrified by. I mean, he knows this is Olaf. He is, you know, freaking out. He's trying not to lose his shits, and Olaf sends him to get the cheeseburgers. The troop is waiting for Larry when he goes to the kitchen. They tell him the dude he's told, or they'll throw him to the leeches. So he very well knows this team. He's very well versed by them. He doesn't know how to deal with them. You know, you can tell he's terrified of them, and again, that really is a great way of showing how threatening they really are. Yes, they have a lot of comedic moments, but they will do a lot of harm, and that's something that they show very well in this episode, is that this troop, and they've shown it throughout a lot of the season, but this troop in general, yeah, they're incompetent about a lot of things. They don't really listen to Olaf a lot, and a lot of times they do their own thing, but they will hurt, definitely. I mean, they definitely are very threatening in that sense, and I like the way we saw that. So Poe assures Olaf that the Baudelaire fortune will still be under his supervision until Violet comes of age, and Olaf claims that he has no interest in the fortune, and Larry comes back with beverages, and the Baudelaires, when Larry calls them the Baudelaires, and he quickly denies that he knows their names, goes back to the kitchen, so they can tell there's something going on with him, and the children insist that Olaf killed Josephine and is trying to get the fortune, but Poe doesn't believe them. He complains they're spouting wild accusations and starts pointing out the differences between Olaf and Sham, and yeah, I mean, I like that Poe is starting to catch on, that he at least knows that, Olaf has the tattoo on his left ankle, and Olaf has that white eyebrow. There are those little details that he knows about Count Olaf, and he does do a good job with that. But, I mean, come on. It's very, very obvious to tell. Yes, he has an eye patch. Yes, he has the peg leg, but, I mean, it's really not hard to tell at all. But, meanwhile, Larry brings the cheeseburgers, emphasizes that he doesn't want anyone to have an allergic reaction that would force them to leave the restaurant, and Violet picks up on Larry's hint, says that they're allergic to peppermints, and he goes back to get the bill while Poe has Olaf sign the paperwork. So it seems like this is all finalized, that he's getting through to Poe this time. Poe is actually starting to believe Olaf, and it actually seems like he is going, Olaf is actually going to successfully get this fortune, which is something that, again, is very well threatened throughout the episode, is Olaf actually going to succeed? It seems like this episode, there's no possible way he can't succeed, because he has everything planned out. He was a lot more, he was a lot more efficient this time around. That's something that, they can tell that he just planned out a lot better this time. So Larry comes back with peppermints on the bill. Klaus quickly grabs them. He and Violet secretly eat them. They quickly have allergic reactions, and Violet says they should go home and rest, but they clearly are doing this so they can get out of the restaurant and, find a way to get back home. So Poe agrees over Olaf's objections. Violet says they can go home themselves, and the banker agrees with her, and the children quickly leave. The townspeople prepare for their coming hurricane, and the taxi driver offers them a ride up to the house. So the drive drops them off to Aunt Josephine's house, and they go back to town, and Klaus begins his research while Violet and Sunny take baking soda baths for their hives, because, I mean, they've really broken out. It's, really bad, and at the restaurant, Poe reviews the terms of the fortune with Olaf. Again, he's planning on giving this fortune to Olaf at this point, and in the kitchen, the phone rings, and when Larry answered, he receives news that the parents are alive in Peru. So it seems that Larry knows about what's going on there, and the hook-handed man takes the phone from Larry before he can utter a warning, obviously because, he didn't want Larry to know that. No one really wants Larry to know that, and, you know how I've complained that I think Mother and Father have been in the episodes, very sporadically and not nearly enough because they really haven't done a lot with them? That is not at all the case in this episode. They're in about maybe 3 or 4 scenes, and they're all very well done. I actually really did like the way that was done, but they do too good of a job of making you think that they're going to get to Violet, Klaus, and Sunny, which again, I've said, is impossible because the show would be over if that happens. So they're not going to get there. So a lot of this is starting to feel very tedious. You know that they're not going to get to Violet, Klaus, and Sunny. Something else is going to happen to them, and there's no way they're going to get to their kids. So I will definitely admit, while I'm happy they did more Mother and Father, in general, it is starting to get a bit tedious because they realize the restaurant's been compromised. They prepare to fly down to the hurricane, and at Aunt Josephine's house, Violet checks with Klaus. He's worked out the note that contains a secret message, Curdled Cave, and Violet figures that Josephine faked her death and is hiding at Curdled Cave. So they check out a map, discover that the fickle fairy goes near the cave, prepare to leave, and a lightning bolt then hits the house, and this was genuinely very threatening. There was such great suspense in this episode. This might be the most suspenseful episode we've had this show so far, and they did a really great job with that. It's tilting the library. Klaus slides himself toward the wide window, but stops on the ledge, and a book with pictures of the spyglass slides by and out of the window. The library tilts back momentarily, and Violet then grabs Sunny and gets to safety. It tilts back, and Klaus falls towards the window. He sees a group photo, and he grabs it, and this is very interesting to watch. When you see this group photo, this group photo actually is of a bunch of people we've seen. Aunt Josephine's there, her husband's there, we see that Monty's there, a lot of characters that we've gotten to know are there. So we're starting, Jacqueline's there, Gustav, and He's hanging on by a rug. The wind blows the library wing back, swinging Klaus back in. He runs to safety. A lime then falls off the kitchen table, rolls in the library. The extra weight caused it to fall into the lake, and the Baudelaires run out as the rest of the house literally falls into the lake, which is actually a very well done joke that they get on a little bit later, which I thought was very funny. But yeah, the house actually fell into the lake, and that threat of Hurricane Herman, now we know why it was such a threat. Now we know why Aunt Josephine was so terrified of what was going on. And the fact it literally blew her house away is pretty crazy to think about, but it's probably one of the most threatening moments we've had in the show so far. And there's a lot of great tension like that throughout this episode. That's one of the reasons why this episode succeeds as well as it does, because of how great the suspense is. So at the restaurant, Poe and Olaf fill out all the forms, and the Curdled Cave is near the Lavender Lighthouse, and the ferry schedule says, weather permitted, at the bottom in fine print, which, as we know, was actually how we were introduced to this whole thing. The weather report, again, plays a very good role in this episode. You know, in part one, it just kind of seemed like, okay, we're in a news station. There's not really a reason to be here. But they actually gave us a reason to, and Lemony actually, I think, has the most character in this episode, and I'll talk about why, but a little bit later. But at the bottom in fine print, the Baudelaires read the schedule when they get to the ferry dock. They decide to steal a nearby skiff, and the hook-handed man is in the rental office. They see him go. The Baudelaires try to work out how to sail and narrowly avoid the wicked whirlpool and the rancorous rocks and the cranky entrance to Curdled Cave, and the hurricane breaks. The Baudelaires spot the Lavender Lighthouse, and they discover that Curdled Cave is for sale. So there's a howling noise. Klaus figures out that it's the wind, and that's all it is. So they enter the cave, and they find Josephine, who's completely alive. She's alive and well, still a bit crazy, but she knows that they would decode her message in hopes that they brought food. She's surprised to see they didn't bring food. Obviously, they couldn't because her entire house is gone, which I love that Aunt Josephine never catches on to in this episode, which is very funny to see that. You know, they don't really know how to tell her, because how do you tell someone, okay, your house, blew away? How do you tell someone that? And that's something that they never tell her in the episode, which is pretty funny. But Violet explains that Olaf almost got them. Everyone thought that Josephine was dead, and their aunt explains that Olaf forced her to write the note after he revealed who he was. So yes, she did in fact know that was Count Olaf, and she agreed but hid a secret message in the notes. And when Olaf took her back to her house, Josephine went ahead to the library, threw a life-size statue through the window to fake her own death to get away from Count Olaf, and when Olaf came in, he saw the hole, assumed that she had killed herself, and that's why Olaf is so confident and so on top of things right now, because he feels that this is no-brainer. He has the fortune. He has won. There's no other possible scenario that can beat him, and I like that he has that victory throughout this episode. You actually do kind of feel bad for him because of that, because he's in complete denial at this point. He thinks that he's won, which we know he hasn't. So Josephine climbed down the cliff to a recreational watercraft and went to Curdled Cave, which I love that she just conveniently had one there. So she figures that Olaf will never find them there. They can stay in the cave for the rest of their lives, and obviously they refuse. They're not going to stay in a cave, and Josephine refuses to go back with them and confronts Olaf because she's too afraid. She doesn't have that, courage to do so. She's so afraid of, how he really is, and Violet points out they haven't been frightened all along, but it didn't stop them. But Josephine refuses to go, and Klaus says the Curdled Cave is for sale. Real estate agents will come to look at it. Terrified of real estate agents, she agrees to go, which again, that little detail we had of her being afraid of real estate agents was very well realized here, and the group sails back into town. Violet assures Josephine there's nothing to worry about. There was also that hilarious moment where Sunny utters something, and Josephine had no idea what she said, and she said, I don't know what that was, but I'm pretty sure it was incorrect grammar. I thought that was very funny. But Klaus shows her the group photo outside of the nearby Lucky Smells lumber mill, and remembered how brave she used to be. Ike, Monty, and the parents are in the photo with a young Josephine, and Josephine says the parents want to raise their children in a quiet world, and before she can explain further, Josephine realizes that they're entering the territory of the lachrymose leeches. So now it's kind of starting to make sense why the parents would just leave their kids unattended to. Just leave their kids there, because clearly they wanted them, out of this. And they're then entering the territory of lachrymose leeches, which again is something we explored in the last episode, and again is very well realized here with how threatening they really are. So they're harmless under someone has recently eaten, unless someone we find out has recently eaten, which Josephine initiated banana just before the kids arrived. Very nice, subtle, funny moment there with her just saying, banana, and we know exactly what that means. So a school of leeches slams in the boat, then move off, and they come back. They start boring through the sides of the boat. The boat starts singing, and Josephine grabs a paddle to row. The leeches soon eat the paddle, and Violet says they need a signal. She says they need to start a fire and hit the bucket to attract attention, and everything is wet from the storm except Josephine's scarf. So Violet grabs from Josephine, tells her aunt to sit down, and Klaus remembers that the binoculars actually have mirrors, and they can start to use a fire. They can start a fire using the light from the lighthouse. However, the angle's wrong, and they don't have another mirror to retract the light. There isn't another way to do that, so Mother and Father then flying overhead. They spot the boat. Father peers down with a pair of binoculars, which refract the lighthouse beam down to Klaus's binoculars. The beam starts the scarf on fire. Violet waves a makeshift torch while Klaus bangs a bucket. Father sees them, spots the ferry approaching, and just as the plane engine goes out, the couple brace for a rough landing, and obviously they did not get to their children in time. So I did like the way that went down, but again, it just seemed really tedious. We knew there was no way they were going to get back to them, so why they even bother? It's not making sense to me, but the ferry pulls up along the boat. They go up to the stairs just as the boat sinks. However, Olaf and his troop have commanded the ferry, and this was such a well-done scene. The actor says that Poe is putting the finishing touches on the adoption papers in a few hours. He will be their guardian, and Olaf is furious that Josephine was going to betray him, that she was just going to leave him aside, and that he, lost. He can't fathom the idea that he has lost. He wants to make sure that he has manipulated everyone, but Josephine is not easily manipulated, and that's something I absolutely love, is that she is someone that the first character we've met, I think, the first adult that is not, well, besides Jacqueline, that's not easily manipulated by Count Olaf. She knows as a Count Olaf, she's not going to trust him, and that was something I definitely really like. So she admits that she has all this courage, and the children gave her the courage to do so. She says she's ready to be fierce, and formidable again, corrects his grammar, and Olaf then shoves her overboard. The leeches eat her. One of the most tragic and crazy deaths we've had. Again, the show's for kids, and it's crazy to think about, but yeah, literally, he let the leeches eat her, and the troop then set sail for Damocles Dock, and we don't really know what's going to happen there and if they're going to be free, but the ferry then pulls up along the boat. They go up the stairs just as their boat sinks. However, Olaf and his troop have commanded the ferry, and the actor says the Poe is putting the finishing touches. Oh, I just read this. So the ferry arrives in the dock where Poe is waiting. Olaf orders everybody off. Klaus points the Lucky Smells lumber mill in the distance before they disembark, and Poe complains the children stole a sailboat and pushed Josephine's house into the lake. The Baudelaires refuse to go with Olaf. There's just no possible way they're going to go with him, and explains that he murdered Josephine, and this time he did. There's no way they can disprove he didn't. So Poe warns that there's nothing that will convince him of their story. Sonny gnaws through Olaf's peg leg. It's such a badass moment, and it breaks off. His real leg drops down, complete with an eye tattoo in the ankle, and at this point, Poe is furious. I mean, I think not just because of the fact that, Olaf tricked him again, but that he fell for it. I think that he's mad at himself that he easily fell for it, and nearby we see a truck with Lucky Smells loads up. Olaf and Poe argue. The children know what they have to do. I mean, they know where they're going to go. They're not going to let Poe decide for them. They go into the back of the truck just before it drives off. Poe then realizes that the Baudelaires are gone, and while he calls them, Olaf and his troops sneak off. And by the time Poe realizes that they're gone, it's just too late. They've already escaped. There's no way he's going to get back to them, and he's obviously pretty upset about it. He's definitely pretty pissed, and in the truck, Klaus warns they made the right choice. Violet says that what matters is what happens, and they go into the middle, they ride off into an unknown fate, and that is the way this episode ends. Really great stuff overall, but let's just get in this episode and where we're going to go from here. So overall, guys, as I said, this still was my least favorite chapter of the series, but this was definitely a much better episode. I thought we got a much better sense of who Josephine was, how unconfident she really was, how she was kind of afraid to express herself and actually put her foot down against Count Olaf because of how terrified she was. But I like that they gave her confidence, that the Baudelaires showed her that, yeah, they're scared, but they know how to, they're not afraid of Count Olaf. Even though they are afraid of him, they do what they can to try to rise up against him in any way they can, show their skill sets, and I like the way they actually gave her that confidence to actually, stand up to him. I thought that was a very well done scene after all. I loved everything they did with Aunt Josephine. I thought that was a lot of fun to watch, and yeah, there was a little bit too much with their grammar, but it actually worked for me here. I thought it was actually funnier in this episode. There were a lot of really great lines there, and I really did love everything there. Definitely gonna miss her character, but what I really loved about her is that she did not for a second fall for Count Olaf's trick. She just wanted him to think that, when in reality, she knew was Count Olaf, and That was something I definitely really love. She, of course, did have a past sort of relationship with him, whether it was love or really what it was. These two definitely knew each other before, and we definitely did get that sense in this episode. So I did like the way that, again, they showed how familiar these two really were, and I thought that was definitely very interesting. But what was also interesting is I love that the Baudelaires once again stepped up. They realized that they need to do things for themselves, and I love that for the first time they actively told Poe no, that they do not want him to pick a guardian for them, because all the guardians he picks end up the exact same way. Wherever they go, they know that Count Olaf is going to find them, and because Count Olaf, he will track where they are, he'll find them, and that's going to be it. So they want to do things on their own, and I love that they made this choice to go off on their own and go off to this lumber mill. Now, this lumber mill, the real question is, even though their parents used to work there, does it really have all the secrets that they need? Which I'm pretty sure it will. I could really see this mill, giving them a lot of secrets. This is going to be the final 2 episodes of the season, so I definitely think we're going to get a lot more answers as to, what the secret organization is all about, because we definitely saw that picture. We know everyone who was in it, and I think we're starting to get a sense of what really that mill was all about and where that's going to take them. That's something I'm definitely interested in getting into, is what's going to happen with the mill, things like that. That's something that's going to be very interesting to watch, and I can't wait to see where they really go with that. If they're finally going to be able to get away from Count Olaf, I don't think they're going to get away from him, because obviously the show would be over if they did, but what will this mill really do for them? That's something I'm definitely very interested in getting into. This also was particularly a great episode for Lemony, I have to say, because I know that I've talked about, how much I do think that they overuse him a lot, which I think Patrick Warburton is spectacular as Lemony Snicket. I don't think we could have had a better performer. I think he's great in the show, but I do feel his narration is a bit much. But this episode, it made sense, because the one thing I haven't talked about is every episode, as we know, he does this sort of, for part 1 at least, he does this sort of dedication for this girl named Beatrice, and in the episode, it's meant to be kind of comical, with him saying, I hope you're dead, but I hope you were alive, but I know you're not, things like that. But we're definitely starting to get a sense that, Lemony's all on his own, and that he really is suffering from, loss, and he doesn't really have anyone to talk to, and that's kind of why he's telling us a story. There's a great scene with him. He's in a graveyard. We don't really know what's going on, but it appears over this gravestone of someone named Beatrice, and we definitely know that Count Olaf and, Lemony Snicket had met before, because he talks to Larry and says that the last person that, easily believed him and that he genuinely felt, some sort of happiness with was Snicket. So we know that obviously he is talking about Lemony Snicket. We don't know what that's all about, but I can't wait to see where that's going to go. And I love that finally he is integrating into the story. Not that he hasn't, he's just kind of felt like a narrator that's just kind of there to provide us information. And this was really, I think, one of the first episodes where he genuinely felt like he was a part of the story. And I really did love the way that was done. I love that we know that Lemony has, met Count Olaf. He's probably had interactions with all these characters before, and there's so much possibilities for where that could go. I definitely really did love that. Now, my problems with this episode are as follows. 1, mother and father. I have no idea where we're going with this now, because sure, I thought it was an interesting twist to have mother and father be alive in episode 2. It's something that, if you've read the books, is fresh and you didn't know about, and kind of provides you with new information. But it's been the same thing every episode, with them trying to find the kids, and they're just not going to reunite with their children. There's no possible way that's going to happen. The show would be over if that happened. So I don't think that they're going to easily reunite with their children. Just not something that's going to go down the way they think it is. I just don't think, maybe that'll happen. I don't know. I just don't see the season ending with Violet, Klaus, and Sonny going to mother and father. It just seems way too simple of an ending. And I know the movie ended like that, with them going to a really good guardian, but I just don't see things ending that way. This show's called A Series of Unfortunate Events, and, things are going to get more and more unfortunate, and I don't think that's, a very unfortunate event if they reunite with their parents. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think there's more to the story. I think something else is going to happen to mother and father, whether it be via, Count Olaf or, what have you. Definitely, the henchmen are in on knowing that they're alive, and I'm interested in seeing what's going on there. And again, I do kind of think that Count Olaf might have been, the cause for the fire. I definitely think that he caused a lot of it, and I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there. And then Poe, I really do love Poe as a character. I like he sees the good in everyone, and I like that he does genuinely want to help the kids, but I mean, can you not be more of a ditz, honestly? I mean, this guy is really starting to annoy me with his lack of thinking. And I mean, yes, I understand he has the clues. He's starting to, understand Count Olaf, and he's starting to understand those things. But just seeing him again, gullible at Count Olaf, I did like, it was just kind of annoying, but I did like the way the episode ended with him feeling very dumbfounded and him realizing that he's alone. He can't really talk to anyone about it. No one to really sympathize with him. I like that he slowly is starting to lose people. I can't wait to see where that's really going to go, and I thought they did a really good job with what's going to happen there. Overall, guys, I really did enjoy this episode overall. I thought there was some really great tension throughout this episode, some really thrilling action scenes. I really did love the way all that was done. I did feel that the episode dragged on a bit, like some of the diner scenes were just a little bit too long, but other than that, I definitely did really love this episode. It was a lot better than the last one, and I am going to give a Series of Unfortunate Events Season 1, Episode 6, The Wide Window, Part 2, a 4 out of 5 or a B+. Guys, this is definitely closer to what the show should be. Sure, it wasn't a perfect ending. It definitely was not nearly as good as a Reptile Room, but just like that episode, the Baudelaires are in control of themselves, and they will do whatever they can to provide for themselves, and for the first time ever, we have no idea really what's going to happen. We don't know if they're actually going to meet up at the mill, if they're going to decide a different choice. This is their future is completely in their own hands, and I like the way that they're choosing their own destiny. They're not letting Poe do that for them anymore, because it just hasn't really helped them. It's just giving them bad guardian after bad guardian. They don't want to kill anyone else, and they don't want to, provide anyone else with misery. So they really just want to go off on their own and get those answers that they need. And there's so much potential for where these final 2 episodes can go. And I'm genuinely interested too, because these are 2 episodes that we've never seen adaptations of before. These other 3 books, we saw adaptations from the movie, but the next 2 episodes, I have no idea what's going to happen, because 1, I've never read those books. 2, I have no prior knowledge of any of that stuff, because I never read the books. So that's something I'm definitely interested in getting into, is what the Miserable Mill is really going to be like. I can't wait to see the way it's going to go down. There's so much potential for where we can go in these final 2 episodes, and I really hope the show does fire on all cylinders, as it definitely should, because especially since they have more creative liberties, hopefully they take that and the show will really start to come in its own. But over, guys, Series of Unfortunate Events. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode overall. I can't believe I have 2 episodes left, but definitely look forward to that, guys. And we'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for tonight's episode of Riverdale, and we'll see you guys for that. So, okay, bye.